Are there a few pieces that you'd like to talk about in the show that like are significant to you, or that?
Yeah, there's a couple over here.
I'm coming. I'm right behind you.
Okay, this is probably going to be hard to see, but
I'm going to do my best here.
I started this series at Anderson Ranch. I was invited in 2019 to come up for 2 weeks as a visiting artist there, and I had the wood shop to myself. So I went up and I started this series that I called the Random X Furniture, and this is one of them. And those other 2 tables in the other room were part of that series. And this is Baltic birch plywood with a faux finish on it.
Wow. It makes it look like it's metal.
Yeah, that was my intent, is to make it look like rusted metal. That's what I wanted.
Right. And this goes back to the conversation with you don't like working with metal so much or this way, or boundary stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when I got this one all finished, I decided it needed the gray glass top to really work with it. And so that's why I used that color. This is kind of an outgrowth of that a year later or so. And so this has aluminum. It's got an aluminum core and then whingy on the outside. And then this is Baltic birch with the faux rust finish on it.
Wow.
And then, and I call it my inside out table because the inside I wanted really complicated and layered. And then the outside I wanted it very plain, more austere with little detail.
So you had to like really look for it.
Yeah. And so
I'm going to come in here and look at that detail on the inside.
So this was kind of a pivotal piece. And then this
one.
It
also reminds me a little bit of a butterfly or a propeller.
Yeah, and you got to remember, when I'm making these things, I don't think in those terms.
Right.
It wasn't a butterfly in my head. When I got it done, I went, oh shit, I made a butterfly. You know, but you know, there's nothing wrong with that.
Maybe you call it a moth.
Yeah. So this is a really important piece in my development. I had decided I wanted to start using more metal in my mixed media pieces, and LA Arboretum contacted me at that time, along with 160 other artists from the area. And what they wanted to do was take all of their dead material. They had all these trees that had died from drought, infestation, or wind blowing them down, and they had processed this lumber into timber, not timber, but cut it up so it could be moved. They invited all these artists to come in and select wood from the whole stash, whatever they wanted, go home and make something out of it, and then the next year they would have an auction and sell the pieces that were made from this wood to replenish their trees on the Arboretum. It was a great project.
Yeah.
And so I went in and I found these beautiful pieces of oak. It looked like this.
Yeah, those are.
And they were gnarly, just like this. So I picked out 2 of those little arches for the base, and then I shaped it, cut in and shaped it. This is the natural oak. And then the bark I painted with diluted glue. Really thin glue. Intact. And I just kept painting it and soaking it with glue to hold the bark in place. And this piece is, what is that, 2017 or so? So it's held together really beautifully. And then the rest of the design, this is one of those pieces that just happened. It's like I sat down and drew what I wanted and made it. It's a rare occurrence.
That it happened exactly the way your sketch was?
Like the sketch I made for this is like a really beautiful drawing that I did. And then I started the piece, and so these are turned on a lathe, and they go all the way back to here.
And is this all wood too?
No, this is steel.
That is steel.
Yeah, with that black patina on it. And all the wood is that oak, though, from the Arboretum. And then after I turned this, I shaped it. And
so you can see the shape.
but one of my best clients bought this piece immediately, and she allowed me to borrow it for a year. She's into it so much and wants people to see it. You know,
it's an incredible piece.
So that's a real important piece for me. This one is important here. They're all important.
They're all important
when I think about them.
Yeah, of course they are.
But
I'm tickled by the ones that you think are important. I think they're all important, but yes.
This piece here was an outgrowth of my Sumi paintings that I was doing texture on. We can look at some of those.
I was going to say, so there's paintings behind here.
But the paintings behind, and so I got this idea that I wanted to do a layered piece that was layered with many of the disciplines that I do, put all in one. So it has the painting in the background with glass, and then I use the full finish, and these are, this is a very designed piece in that as I was working with it, I was creating shapes that I wanted to work with one another. And you can see here how it tucks in, it's pushed back. Here it goes through the edge of the frame, sticks out and bypasses here. And so
this piece too is, I mean, it's not functional, it is decorative.
It's just a sculptural piece,
yeah.
wall piece. Mm-hmm. And so when I got done with it, I looked at it and I went, what am I doing? What is this piece about? What am I doing? You know, and I really liked it. It's one of my favorite pieces. And one of my other clients that I'll show you other work that they own in the show, she picked it out immediately, and I went, I knew that she would get it. And so I started looking at it and I started thinking about it. This is how my mind is all the time.
Oh, that's
it's
interesting.
Layers of images of different projects, different things, 24/7. It's hardly ever stops.
Yeah.
And I'm always got things going on, or things I'm thinking about in one media or another. And so I looked at this and I went, well, this is just kind of a picture of my mind, of how things are always layered all the time and overlapping.
I know this is a term that gets thrown around a lot now, ADHD and ADD. Are you familiar with those terms?
With ADD? Yeah. My sister, the shrink, said we all had it.
That I was wondering, had it. Yeah, I was wondering because this line of thinking is familiar to me.
She's the same way. She was the same way as I was. She's passed away now, but her interests are like my interests, just all over the map and doing all kinds of stuff.
Now, you and I were talking about this before we got on camera about how this probably is keeping you a lot more alive and young than many of your friends.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that you have interests and curiosities and you're exploring always.
Well,
you're still growing.
Yeah. The thing that I really enjoy about making things is it's like the object is just a little trophy of a time spent.
Yeah.
You know, it's just there at the end of this process. And what I really enjoy is the process of making a piece, of both when it's a very disciplined piece and one that's just off the wall and grows organically. But it's that process of problem solving, of putting pieces together and waiting for the right thing to come out of the blue.
Yeah.
You know, you don't really know what you're going to do, and then it just comes. I love that feeling when it comes.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I like about all this stuff. And even with these, when I start to do a painting like this, there's two things I have. I have a piece of paper and a glass of wine. And I don't know, I have no idea what I'm going to do. Things just start happening, like this one. These all came from that show in 2013 at Bunny Gunner, these big paintings. Mm-hmm. And the reason was I was having eye surgery.
You were having eye surgery?
Yeah, I had a hereditary cornea problem. And so I had already had surgery on one eye, and then the other one was still really bad. The kind of thing where you're looking down the highway and you can't tell whether it's a truck or a car coming at you. That kind of stuff. So I had one eye that was really good and one really bad. So you can imagine what was going on in my brain trying to make sense. It was horrible. And so I had a show coming up. I decided I would do a clay show. And so I went out and started working with some pieces, but I had this horrible vision. I couldn't see the detail. And my work is all about the detail, the subtle little detail. And so I went, oh, well, that's not going to work. I can't do a clay show. So I guess I'll do a drawing show. So I started working on some drawing, and I had double vision. So I didn't know which line was which. And I really started freaking out then, because I had a show date coming in a month. And so
How many pieces were you hoping to have in the show?
well, I wound up I had a lot of pieces in the show, because once I got going,
You couldn't stop.
I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
And so then I remembered, in desperation, I remembered that I bought some big brushes and some sumi ink, Japanese sumi ink. And so I started digging around and I found them. And I'd been doing monoprints, so I had a lot of really nice Arches paper. And so literally had no idea what I was going to do, but just started painting. And that worked, because the big strokes I could see, there's not a lot of detail. Yeah. And so I wound up doing, I think I did.
I have to ask you about this little feature on your painting. Is that actually your foot, or was that?
That's my foot.
It is your foot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What happened was I finished it, and it was laying on the bench, and I was looking at it, and that area bothered me. And so I just threw it on the ground and took my shoe off and put ink on it and stepped on it, just because it needed that.
It's the perfect little blob.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
And the way it went on, it's just really beautiful.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's how I got into doing the Sumi series. And I had bought some tagging paint at the art store,
That the taggers use?
the gold, I think it's called gold spray paint.
Yeah, yeah.
And I wanted to use it on one of my mixed media pieces. So I had a bunch of different colors. And so that's what I used on some of these, was that tagging paint. And then I went crazy and bought $100 worth of spray cans, you know.
Are you inspired by graffiti?
I really liked some of it.
Yeah.
I really do. I think it's amazing stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in doing it, you know, and I'm not sure I'm real happy seeing it all over the place.
Yeah.
But when you go to Berkeley, there's some really amazing artists in Berkeley doing really large paintings. I don't know what they call them, tags.
Yeah.
And my daughter actually follows one of them,
Oh,
because
really?
it's just, and she took me around and showed me some of them. It's beautiful art. It's amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And it's done in a way that's not offensive, you know. I don't know. That's a weird area to get into.
Yeah.
Critiquing.
Well, my guess though is that you're inspired by everything.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I can't imagine that there's something that you couldn't find a nugget in.
Yeah, it's carried over into all kinds of things, like gardening. Okay.
Okay, so we're stopping here on this piece. I requested to stop at this piece.
Okay.
And just, I want to just get in here, and it looks like it's just paper and pins or lint.
These are actually paper I saved from my filters of the ponds that I was telling you about.
Oh.
I saved the filters and cut the ends off and spread them out. I use them as artwork because they're just beautiful.
So they're water filters, yeah.
Yeah. So those were pond filters for the lilies. This is called Laundry Lost Poems. Mm-hmm. And the way it started was, Kath and I are a very independent person. Well, she was still alive.
And
we do our own laundry.
This was your partner?
Yeah.
Okay.
We do our own laundry. Yeah, we were together 40 years, but she passed away in 2012. And anyway, I did my laundry this one time, and I was folding it up, and I felt a lump in the pocket, and I pulled it out, and it was one of these little nuggets. Mm-hmm. And I looked at it, and I went, that was a poem that I put in my pocket. I wrote something down real quick and put it in my pocket. And so over the next couple of years, I collected all of these accidental washings, and they reminded me. I just said, I've got to do something with this. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I got to do something with them. And then they reminded me of little bugs or insects. And so they're like word bugs.
Yeah.
And so I decided to mount them like you would mount insects in a display case.
Yeah.
But basically, I don't know what's on any of them, but they were all notes or something that got washed in my shirt.
I love it though. I love that they're all different colors too.
Yeah.
You know, they're lovely. Okay, we're moving on to the next. Okay, here we are looking at a piece of furniture. This is the piece?
This is the piece.
Ah.
Yeah.
Look at this beautiful bench.
So
it's amazing.
The reason this got built originally was I have a little cargo trailer that I had remodeled and built in a whole Japanese interior in the back of it with a shoji, sliding shoji for my clothes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was a tiny little trailer, and this was the bed I built for it originally. And it was only 10 feet long, it was 5 feet wide and 5.5 feet tall. So I built this, and I wanted to do it in that Japanese joinery style. And so originally...
No nails?
Oh no, it has screws.
It has screws?
It does have screws. But it has the, the finger joint.
Yeah, I was going to say, I see the dovetails there and stuff.
And so originally it was just a bed. It had a pad in there on my bed. The back was a different back. It had bamboo pieces going across like this. And out in the desert, it cracked and dried out, and they looked terrible. So I decided I wanted to rebuild this into a real piece of furniture. So what I did was I made a new back for it, this whole part here, and I had 3 cushions made for it, like a day bed. Mm-hmm. And so I just had that finished, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah, and that's about when I saw it.
Yeah. And then really the little pins here
I'm coming.
Are black bamboo that I use for plugs.
Oh. You can't even hardly see them. I have to get really close. They're so small.
I took the little stems and made
so
plugs out.
Look at that.
And then that's ebony plugs. They're
the ebony?
The square ones.
So
anyway, I was really happy with this piece when I got it.
It's really beautiful, plus the yellow is just so striking against the wood. Color. It's gorgeous.
I went to a friend of mine who has a place called Modern for All, and I asked him about upholstery because he rebuilds and refinishes pieces and sells mid-century stuff. So he turned me on to this fabric, and I just fell in love with it, the color of it.
It's really beautiful.
It's perfect.
So now, is this going to have a place in your home somewhere?
It's going to when we leave here, because I doubt if it's going to sell.
You never know, but...
Yeah, it is for sale, but we'll see.
Out of curiosity, do you want to tell me how much it is?
$8,500.
Not as much as I thought.
Yeah. I'm not famous.
Yes, you are.
So this piece...
I'm going to move closer to it. The ducky piece?
These 3 pieces are owned by the same clients. Really good friends of mine. And
I have to zoom in on this because I see that there's this woodworking on here.
Yeah, this is bloodwood in here, sateen.
Bloodwood.
And that's all inlaid.
I've never even
it's
heard
about an
of
eighth of an inch
bloodwood.
thick.
It's beautiful.
And the other wood is wingi, which is an African wood, and then walnut. Heavy walnut for the legs.
Is this really metal here? Or
it's an aluminum slab.
It's aluminum.
This is a really heavy table. Wow. And I don't know if you can see it. Probably doesn't show up, but since it's my table, I can tip it up.
Yeah, I would never do this. Oh, I see.
You can see how sculpted it is around the edge.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It is something though that you would only see from a distance. That sculpture.
Yeah, it's a little hidden thing, and I like that about my pieces. There's a lot of that
little
in my
surprise.
Work. Little surprises. Like here, they ordered the coffee table first. I made that, and then they wanted a chair, and so I did the inlay on the back of the chair to kind of tie it in with the other piece.
So you see
it's hard to see in
the bloodwood here.
Yeah.
But here's your surprise. Beautiful. So beautiful.
And this is a piece that I started. I think originally it was a panel that Dee, my current wife, had. She's a painter, mixed media artist. She had a panel that she wasn't using, had been sitting around for a long time, so I asked her if I could use it. So it would be the overall panel. And so here again, I didn't exactly know what I was going to make.
It's a panel of wood, a panel of canvas?
It's a wood, yeah, it's got a frame with plywood on it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I didn't make that very clear.
No, that's okay. I was thinking.
And this is a piece that I just had a kind of feeling of what I wanted to do with it, but I didn't know. I didn't do any drawings for it or anything. Just started, and what I did was start by building these two areas out, and I knew I was going to use the rust finish, and so when I was at one of the lumber yards, I saw this frame material or molding. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it's really unique.
And so that's just a commercial bought piece of molding. So is the other one here.
Oh, they're
different.
They are different.
Yeah. And so
I still can't. I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that this is all wood, but it looks like rusted metal.
It's all wood.
Because you're so good at this. This is the other one.
And I wanted it to have that look of the desert, of the rusty material and wasted material you find in the desert. Because the theme of the piece was kind of my anger at people's disrespect for the desert where I live.
Yeah.
And they come out and they drive all over people's property, and they want to put solar up, they want to put windmills up, and they don't care anything about the people that live there and own the property. And so this was kind of coming out of that state of mind. And so I just started developing these forms, one after the other, and juxtaposing, and with the idea that it was going to be rusted when I got it done.
So I'm only just right now, as I'm looking at this and thinking about the work, seeing those ducks as like target practice.
Yeah, I was going to get to that.
Yeah.
So this is basically the mesa that I love about the desert. And here again, just different layering of the stone, rock cliffs and stuff. And so I got this piece done, the eagle. I got it all done, and I just looked at it and I hated it again. And so I went, something's wrong. It didn't come out the way I wanted. It doesn't have the energy that I wanted in the piece. And so I went to bed that night, and I woke up at 4 in the morning with the ducks in my head. And I said, yeah, it's like a carnival shoot, you know, it's like. And so I made a cutout for the duck, laid all this out, cut it all out, and I had this piece of molding. It was perfect for the little screw drive that goes across. And I love the piece now. It just totally gave it what it needed.
Yeah.
You know, and I call it nickel slot because that's what this is. A nickel slot. That's what the desert is worth to some people.
Nickel slot. You know? So you can see that detail. It's hard to read.
Anyway, that's one of those weird little pieces that just
came out of somewhere.
Yeah, I didn't plan it. This is another one that I did after the fire, the lake fire was heading down from Barton Flats, heading down towards Gorgonio. And I told Dee, if the wind changes and comes the way it normally comes this time of year, it was blowing from the north, but normally that time of year it blows from the southwest. And so I said, if that wind changes, that fire's going to come right at us. And so it did. The wind changed, it started coming right at us. And so we had to evacuate. 12 years before, we had another fire that burned through. And so it had been that long since the original burn. And so the Forestry Service was saying, it won't be a problem because it's going to burn into the old burn scar and go out. You know,
because there will be nothing there
because there's nothing really to sustain it. And that's what happened. But before that, you know, on the night we got evacuated, when you looked over the hill, it looked like it was right on the hill. I mean, it was just red and embers. And
that's
anyway,
scary.
these pieces, I did a series of pieces just based on the stress and emotion from going through all that.
Are these the filters from the
And
pond?
that's more filters.
Yeah. Now I'm recognizing, things over and over.
And so this is called Waiting for the Burn. And it was that period of time where we were holding the roof down and that emotion of, is it really going to come over?
Right. What's going to happen?
Yeah. So anyway, so this is experimental stuff. I'm a very low tech guy. So I have a t-shirt press. And so I took my iPhone photo, put it in Photoshop and tweaked it, and then put it on a t-shirt transfer, and then printed it on fiberglass in my t-shirt press. And so that's what this is. It's an iPhone image tweaked in Photoshop, printed on thin fiberglass.
It looks like a painting. I mean, it looks like, you just got your paintbrush and did.
Well, that's what I like about Photoshop. You can do anything with it.
Yeah. It looks great.
Yeah. Wow. So my daughter just came down to visit me the first time she'd come to our place in the desert, and she just finished a house in Todos Santos, Baja. She's moving down there permanently.
Oh.
And she picked this one out to take with her, to have in our new home. Yeah, there. It's a little home, 1,700 feet, but really beautifully done. But I was shocked that she wanted a piece.
You were shocked that your child wanted a piece of yours?
Well, it's funny. The one around the corner, the Sumi painting around the corner, belongs to her, and I borrowed it for the show because she didn't know if it was going to work in her Baja home. Oh. And I said, well, if you're going to put it in storage, I want it back, and so I'm holding it for her right now. So this is another interesting piece. Similar process, but here again, mixed media that just happens. There was no drawings for this or anything. Dumpster dive here. This was testing out a little scrap of material that I tested a bronze finish on. I never throw those things away. They become found objects.
Something,
yeah. And so this is my grandson. We were in Berkeley. I was visiting my daughter there. His son was a hip hop dancer. He was part of an Oakland troupe, and they performed all over the Bay Area. And so we were sitting outside right at dusk, and I looked up on the garage, and he was doing some of his moves on the garage. So I just snapped a shot of him. And so this is him. Here again, playing with Photoshop, and I mounted it on the same fiberglass, only I bowed it out so the light would bounce off the aluminum and illuminate it somewhat. That was the idea anyway.
Yeah.
And the rest of it just happened.
I was going to say, I don't think the lighting in here is especially good for this piece right now.
No, it's not. Yeah.
Because it makes it pretty flat, at least on camera, but you can see from here that it's bowed. And
then Dee's mother, when she was in her early 20s.
Oh, yeah. It's so funny. You almost don't see, unless you're looking, you almost don't see.
This is my mother in her early 20s.
Oh, that's so sweet.
But they were like 20 years apart.
Yeah.
Because I'm 13 years older than Dee. And her mother had 6 children by the time she was 23.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, started
she was busy.
Way early.
She was busy.
Yeah, and so my mother, my oldest sister died at birth, or right after birth. And then my mother had 3 more children. But I called it dry line. This was Maurice's clothesline in Berkeley. And I walked out the door and the light was hitting it just right, and I just took a shot of it. And so I put it in Photoshop and flipped it around and did this.
Did your thing.
It's called dry line. And it was just kind of an homage to the trouble that they both experienced as young women.
It's kind of also like the clothing line ties them together in a way, as women, as housemakers, as just, and to each other because of you and Dee.
Yeah. But anyway, that was kind of the story behind this. And this one, these are printed on aluminum here. And then what I did after I printed this, I went back and sanded it. And then I went back over with an acrylic medium with lava dust in it. which is what the cloudy specks are.
Nice.
I wanted to kind of seal it on there. Yeah, we could spend hours.
We could spend hours. I just, oh, here, I'm just going to, no, I can't flip it around, so I'm not going to.
Let's finish in front of this one.
Okay.
Around the corner.
Let's walk over.
Yeah. Because this was the last piece I did.
This was the first piece you and I talked about before we got on camera.
And so I thought we'd talk about it last because it was the last one to come in the show. And this is what I was talking about, embracing technology finally.
Right.
Where I create the drawing for the piece, send it to my friend who puts it in Photoshop, and then sends it to the company who translates it into their CNC language, and it's cut with a water jet, which gives me these really crisp lines, which is what I was after.
So these are like pieces of steel, just to clarify.
Pieces of mild steel, and I had them cut, even though this one was just a rectangle, I had them cut it at the same time, so we had the same edge work.
Right.
And then I designed a really strong mount that goes on the wall, bolts on, and then the piece slides down into that to keep it perfectly plumb.
You know, even now in your later years, I mean, how long ago did Sam pass?
He passed away in May of '09.
I mean, it's been a while since he's passed.
Yeah.
How much of his influence do you still feel on what you do? A lot? A little? Some?
I feel some.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like as you?
But most of it is in edge treatment. It's in kind of a look that I want, that glow. Mm-hmm. And I know how to juxtapose a soft form against a hard line form. I know how to use that. Mm-hmm. I learned that from Sam. Mm-hmm. You know, I have to. It's an interesting point because I left him in '69. I was gone for 23 years or so. I came back in '92.
Wow.
And when I came back to work for him is right when the freeway was about to happen. And so I figured that was the time to come back and be with him because he was in his 80s and I knew it was going to kill him to move. It was going to be horrific. Mm-hmm. And so when I came back, his furniture had evolved into these amazing sculptural forms. I had no idea how to work on them or shape them or anything. So Mike Johnson, who had been working with Sam for at that point, about 10 years, 9 or 10 years, he's the one that taught me how to shape the new furniture, how to do it. Now, we work totally differently. Mm-hmm. You know, we had different styles of working, but I followed his rule until I knew what had to be done and knew how to do it. Then I started doing it the way I do it, you know.
Right, so that you figured it out in your way.
But it was a whole new learning curve. I was a master craftsman when I came back, and I had to learn how to make his furniture. And it's that, what I learned during that process was the extent that you can push the hard line against the soft form and make it work to your advantage, you know.
Do you think that he was influenced by what you did?
I'm just going to say yes, because it's mostly architectural stuff. Yeah. Where he utilized things I showed him. And I don't want to go into detail, but
no, you don't have to. I was just thinking about this rocking chair over here and about how it was what he considered too heavy.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if ever he was swayed by, you know, what you were doing and reconsidering how he was looking at things.
Not in furniture, I don't think. No. Not in furniture.
No.
No. Elements he incorporated in the house as he was developing the house and building it. Yeah. There's some things there that are reminiscent of pieces I made in the '70s.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So he wasn't real obvious with that stuff, but I could do a walking tour with you around the house and show you where ideas came from.
Yeah.
because I knew Sam.
Yeah.
And he'd go away on a trip and he'd come back and he'd be all like, gung-ho, I want to build this, and I'd be looking at him going, now, what did he see? What did he see? And one time, he came back from D.C., Washington, and the next time I came to visit him from Santa Cruz, he had started putting these pyramid roofs on the house, cutting holes in the ceilings and putting pyramids up, and it looked really cool. Expanded the space, brought in more light from the glass. It was really cool. And so I was going, I wonder what sponsored that, And so Dee and I were in D.C. Oh no, it's when Catherine and I went back for his opening, for his retrospective in 2001. And we took off on our own, went to the museums and stuff, and spent a lot of time walking around. And so we were on the mall by the Asian Museum. And I sat down while she was going to use the restroom. And I was sitting there and I looked over at the castle. And I see these pyramid roofs, squares. Sam was in Washington every year, just about, And so
it must have been.
So I just looked at those and I went, bingo, because here they were, and it may or may not have been the thing that set him off, but I feel like I know him well enough to know that he was influenced by that.
Yeah, of
course. He was influenced by other things.
Of course. I mean, as artists, it's our job to be influenced by things and use it
I am
however
too.
we could,
I am
of course.
Too, And so I subscribe to design magazines like Artforum and art magazines, Artforum and Metropolis and Interior Design, and I pretty much hate everything I see in them. But the reason I keep my subscription is when I'm sitting and going through it, it triggers things in my mind. It has nothing to do with what I'm looking at, but there's something about that process of looking at design and looking at things that stimulates me.
Yeah.
And so every year I swear I'm not going to subscribe again because most of the stuff is not very interesting to me. And
but it's doing something.
I keep it because of that stimulation, because it triggers things.
Yeah. All right.
So,
last words for people that are watching this. What do you want to tell them? Encouragement?
Make things that make you feel good and you enjoy doing. That's would be my advice. Try to do things that make you happy and make you feel good at the end of it.
Yeah.
I gave up part of my career, as I said before, because I chose to work in art fields. But I made my own living for 20-some years, doing woodworking and designing store interiors and building casework and all that kind of stuff. And I enjoyed doing most of it. But by working with Sam and by working at the universities and other venues, it allowed me to work in my studio without pressure for the most part.
Yeah.
And so I don't recommend that for everybody, but that's what made me happy, what worked for me.
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Well, it's been fun talking with you too.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody.